I watched my father slide the document across his mahogany desk, the same desk where I'd sat on his lap as a child, learning to read financial reports before I could ride a bike. My mother stood behind him, her hand on his shoulder, united front perfected after 38 years of marriage. The paper was a transfer of shares. My shares, the ones I'd earned through blood and 15-hour days. My sister Melissa sat in the corner, trying to look humble, failing spectacularly. "Sign it, Victoria," my father said. "Your sister deserves this. You're too emotional for leadership." I picked up the pen. My hand didn't shake. Why would it? They had no idea what I'd done 72 hours ago. They had no idea the board had already voted. They had no idea that tomorrow morning, the business section of every major newspaper would carry a headline that would destroy them. I signed my name with a flourish. "There," I said, standing. "I hope you both get exactly what you deserve." I walked out of that office and I never looked back. My name is Victoria Chen, and I'm 29 years old. 3 years ago, I was named one of Forbes's 30 Under 30 for turning around our company's failing international division. I have an MBA from Wharton, a track record that speaks for itself, and a reputation in the industry that my father built his career hoping to achieve. I've closed deals worth hundreds of millions of dollars. I've negotiated with CEOs who eat people like my parents for breakfast. None of that mattered to them. Because I cried at my grandmother's funeral, because I raised my voice when my sister sabotaged a client present, because I actually gave a damn about the 2,000 employees who depended on our family business for their livelihoods. Too emotional, that's what they called it. Let me tell you what really happened, and why that signature I gave them was the last gift they'd ever receive from me. It started 3 months before that final meeting, though really, it had been building my entire life. Chen Industries was founded by my grandfather in 1962. He started with one textile factory and built it into a manufacturing empire. When he died, my father took over, and the company went public but remained family-controlled. My father always said the business would go to the most qualified of his children. For 29 years, I believed him. Melissa is 32, 3 years older than me. Growing up, she was the golden child. Perfect grades without trying, perfect hair, perfect smile. She floated through life while I fought for every scrap of recognition. When I was 12, staying up until midnight finishing a science project, she was at parties. When I was 16, interning at the company during summers, she was backpacking through Europe with friends. My parents called her well-rounded. They called me too intense. Melissa went to a state school and majored in communications. I went to Wharton and graduated top of my Taichi class. She worked in our marketing department, showing up at 10 and leaving at 4. I worked in operations, strategy, international development, anywhere they needed someone who actually understood how to read a balance sheet. When my father started talking about succession planning 2 years ago, I assumed it was a formality. Every metric pointed to me: revenue I'd generated, divisions I'd saved, relationships I'd built with the board members and institutional investors. Victoria's the obvious choice, board member Richard Thornton told my father during a meeting I wasn't supposed to hear. I was walking past the conference room, saw the door slightly ajar. "She's too much like her mother was at that age," my father replied. "Emotional. Makes everything personal." "She makes everything profitable," Richard shot back. "Your Q3 numbers were up 40% because of her acquisition strategy. Melissa has better people skills. Melissa doesn't know the difference between EBITDA and a cocktail party." My father's voice went cold. "Melissa is my daughter too. She deserves a chance." I kept walking, my heart pounding, but I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I went back to my office and worked until 2 in the morning on the Japanese expansion deal that would eventually bring in $300 million in new contracts. Too emotional, right? The real breaking point came 3 months ago, in early September. We were in the middle of negotiating a merger with Steinberg Corp., a deal that would double our market share in the Northeast. I'd been handling the negotiations for 6 months. I knew every detail of their operation, every clause in the proposed contract, every concern their CFO had about the integration process. The night before the final signing, my father called me into his office. "Melissa's going to close the Steinberg deal," he said, not looking up from his computer. I stood there, certain I'd misheard. "What?" "She needs a win. Something to put on her resume for when she takes over." "Dad, I've been working on this for 6 months. Steinberg's team knows me. Their CEO requested me specifically for the closing. And now they'll work with Melissa. It's decided." "This is insane. She doesn't know anything about the deal structure. She doesn't understand their debt covenants or the integration timeline." "Victoria." He finally looked at me, his expression tired. "Everything doesn't have to be about you. Your sister needs this opportunity. Stop being so selfish." Selfish? I'd worked 80-hour weeks for 5 years. I'd sacrificed relationships, friendships, any semblance of a personal life. I'd made this company my entire existence because I believed that hard work and results mattered. "Fine," I said. "Let her close it." I walked out before he could see my face. The next day, Melissa went to the Steinberg closing. She wore a designer suit I later found out my mother bought her and carried a briefcase she'd never opened. She sat in the conference room with 8 Steinberg executives and tried to answer basic questions about the deal terms. "What's your plan for integrating our East Coast distribution network?" their COO asked. "Well, we'll integrate it," Melissa said, smiling like that was an answer. "The contract specifies a phased integration over 18 months, I'd written in my notes, which she apparently hadn't read. "Could you speak to the rationale for that timeline?" "18 months feels right," she said. I heard about this from Sarah Kim, our corporate attorney who'd been in the room. She called me immediately after. "Victoria, it was a disaster. They kept asking for you." Melissa kept deflecting. "Steinberg's CEO finally said they needed to reconsider the terms. Can you save it? If you get on a plane to New York tonight." I was on the 8 o'clock flight. By midnight, I was in a hotel conference room with Steinberg's team, rebuilding trust, answering every question, addressing every concern. By 4 in the morning, we'd restructured 2 deal points that actually improved our position. By 6, I had signed documents. I flew back to Chicago at noon, went straight to the office and put the executed contracts on my father's desk. He looked at them, then at me. "Melissa said everything went smoothly," he said. "Melissa almost killed a $300 million deal. I flew to New York and closed it myself. So you had to be the hero again. I had to save the company. Again. This is exactly what I'm talking about." He stood up, his face reddening. "You can't let anyone else succeed. You have to swoop in and take over. Do you know how you made your sister feel? Do you know how I feel? Working myself to death while she gets credit for showing up? You're too emotional about this business, Victoria. You take everything personally. That's not how leaders think. Leaders care about outcomes. Leaders care about the people depending on them. Leaders don't hand over critical negotiations to unqualified family members because of some misguided sense of fairness." I was shouting. I never shouted. "Get out of my office," he said quietly. I left. I went to my own office, closed the door, and for the first time in years, I cried. Hard, ugly crying that I was grateful no one could see. The next morning, my father sent a company-wide email announcing that Melissa would be taking a more prominent role in major client relationships. "We're committed to developing the next generation of leadership," it said. The subtext was clear to everyone who mattered. That's when I called Richard Thornton. Richard was 68, the longest-serving board member, and the closest person we had to my grandfather's moral compass. He'd been pushing back against my father's favoritism for years, but he was just 1 vote out of 9. "I need to talk to you," I said. "Not as a board member, as someone who actually cares about this company." We met at a coffee shop downtown, far from the office, far from anywhere we might be seen. "Your father's making a mistake," Richard said before I could even start. Everyone knows it. Then why aren't you stopping him? Because he controls 45% of the voting shares. I've tried. Martinez has tried. Even your father's college roommate, Tom, has tried talking sense into him. He won't listen. What if there was another option? Richard studied me over his coffee. What are you thinking? The bylaws allow for the board to appoint a CEO independently of the chairman's recommendation in certain circumstances, if the board determines that the company's strategic interests require it. That's an obscure clause. Your grandfather put it in 40 years ago to prevent hostile takeovers. But it exists. Victoria, your father would see that as a coup. It would destroy your family. My family is already destroyed. I'm just the only one who's admitted it yet. I laid out my case over the next hour. Revenue figures, strategic wins, projected growth models under different leadership scenarios. I showed him the feedback from our institutional investors, several of whom had privately expressed concern about Melissa's rumored ascension. I showed him employee satisfaction scores from divisions I'd managed versus divisions she'd been involved with. The employees love you, Richard said, reviewing the data. The investors trust you. The clients ask for you specifically. But your father, my father is going to drive this company into the ground because he can't admit that his perfect daughter is a liability. If we do this, it needs to be unanimous. All 9 board members. Otherwise, your father will claim we're acting improperly. He'll sue. It'll get ugly. Can you get 9 votes? Richard was quiet for a long moment. Give me 2 weeks. I'll talk to everyone individually. But Victoria, you need to understand. If we do this, there's no going back. Your father will never forgive you. Good, I said, because I'm done begging for his approval. Over the next 2 weeks, Richard worked methodically. He met with each board member, presented the data, made the case. Some needed more convincing than others. Tom, my father's old friend, was the hardest sell. I've known your father for 40 years, he told me when we met. He's a good man. He's a good man who's making a terrible decision. Maybe Melissa will surprise everyone. Would you bet 2,000 jobs on that? Would you bet the company my grandfather built? Tom sighed. Your father's going to hate you for this. He already does. He just won't admit it. In the end, we got all 9 votes. 9 board members willing to invoke an obscure bylaw and appoint a new CEO against the chairman's wishes. It was unprecedented in our company's history. It was also completely legal. The board meeting was scheduled for a Friday afternoon, 3 weeks ago. My father wasn't invited. This was an independent board session, perfectly within their rights. I wasn't invited either, not officially, but Richard called me an hour after it concluded. It's done, he said. You're the new CEO. Official announcement goes out Monday morning. And my father? He remains chairman, but his operational authority is limited. We're prepared for pushback. We have the votes, the bylaws, and the documentation. He's going to lose his mind. Probably. But you're the right choice, Victoria. Don't doubt that. I hung up and sat in my apartment, staring at my phone. I felt numb. No joy, no triumph. Just a hollow exhaustion. I knew what was coming. The weekend passed in a blur. I told no one. Not friends, not colleagues, not the man I'd been casually dating for 3 months, who still didn't really understand what I did for a living. I sat alone in my apartment and waited for Monday morning, when the press release would go out and the world would know. But my father didn't wait for Monday. Sunday afternoon, my mother called. Your father wants to see you. Tomorrow morning, 9 o'clock, his office. He has something important to discuss. What is it? Just be there, Victoria. I knew. Somehow he'd found out. Maybe one of the board members had felt guilty. Maybe he'd sensed something was wrong. But I knew what Monday morning would bring. I showed up at 9 exactly. My mother and Melissa were already there, which was unusual. Family meetings about the business typically didn't include Melissa unless it was a PR event. Sit down, my father said. I sat. I've made a decision about the company's future, he began. After a great deal of thought and consultation with your mother, I've decided that Melissa should take over as CEO. Melissa tried to look humble. Her face said she already had her victory speech prepared. The board will be informed at their next meeting. My father continued. This is about what's best for the company. Melissa has the temperament for leadership. She has the people skills, the emotional intelligence, the ability to build consensus. And what do I have? I asked quietly. You have talent, Victoria. Nobody's questioning that. But you're too emotional. You make things personal. You fight with people. That's not what a CEO does. I close deals. I generate revenue. I save failing divisions. And you burn bridges doing it, my mother interjected. Do you know how many people have complained about your intensity, your demands? Employees who didn't want to work, executives who were embezzling, clients who were trying to renegotiate contracts in bad faith. Yes, I know exactly who complained. This isn't a debate, my father said. I'm offering you a generous position. Senior Vice President of Strategic Development. Good salary, good benefits, meaningful work. But the CEO role goes to your sister. Because she deserves it. Melissa finally spoke. I've been working toward this my whole life. I looked at her. Really looked at her. She believed it. She actually believed she'd earned this. What about the board? I asked my father. What about them? Do they get a say? I control 45% of voting shares. I have the final say on operational leadership. And if they disagree? His face hardened. They won't. I've built relationships with these people for decades. They trust my judgment. I could have told him then. I could have said the board met on Friday. I could have said they already voted. I could have saved us all the next part. But I didn't. Because I wanted him to commit. I wanted him to go all in on this betrayal so that when the truth came out, there would be no ambiguity about what he'd chosen. I need you to sign something, my father said, sliding a document across his desk. I picked it up. It was a transfer of shares. My shares? The 10% I'd earned through stock options and bonuses over the years. A transfer to Melissa to consolidate family voting power under her leadership. You want me to give her my shares. I want you to support your sister. This is about family unity. If I don't sign, then you're choosing to be difficult, to put your ego ahead of the family. My mother stepped forward. Victoria, please, don't make this harder than it needs to be. Your father's made his decision. We're all trying to move forward. Why can't you just be happy for your sister? Happy. They wanted me to be happy. I looked at the three of them. My father, convinced of his own wisdom. My mother, enabler extraordinaire. My sister, smug in her unearned victory. I thought about the board meeting on Friday. I thought about the press release drafted and ready to go out Monday morning. I thought about the look on their faces when they saw it. I picked up the pen. You're right, I said. This is about what's best for the company. I signed my name on every line that required a signature. Slow, deliberate, making sure each letter was perfect. There, I said, standing. Melissa, I hope you enjoy your victory. Mom, Dad, I hope you both get exactly what you deserve. That's a strange thing to say, my mother said, uncertain. Is it? I smiled. I'm just trying to be supportive. Isn't that what you wanted? I walked to the door, paused, turned back. One more thing. You should probably read the business section tomorrow morning. I think you'll find it interesting. What are you talking about? My father asked. You'll see. I left the office. I walked past the secretary who'd worked there for 20 years, who gave me a knowing look. I walked past the elevators and took the stairs, 12 flights down, because I needed to move, needed to burn off the adrenaline coursing through me. I got in my car and drove home. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I poured myself a whiskey and waited. Monday morning came. The press release went out at 8 a.m. Eastern Time, 7 a.m. in Chicago. Chen Industries announces new CEO, Victoria Chen appointed in unanimous board decision. The article was in the Wall Street Journal, the Financial Times, Bloomberg, every major business publication. Richard had made sure of it. The coverage was extensive, detailed, explaining the board's rationale, the unanimous vote, the bylaw they'd invoked. In an unprecedented move, Chen Industries' board of directors has appointed Victoria Chen, 29, as the company's new CEO, citing her exceptional track record and strategic vision. The appointment was made under a provision in the company's bylaws that allows for independent board action in matters of strategic necessity. Chen, who has been instrumental in the company's recent international expansion and turnaround of multiple divisions, will assume her duties immediately. My phone started ringing at 7:03 a.m. I didn't answer. At 7:15, my father called. I let it go to voicemail. He called 8 more times. At 8:00, my mother called 4 times. At 8:30, Melissa called, crying hysterically. I could hear her even though I didn't answer. At 9, I got a text from Richard. Board meeting at 11. Your father's demanding answers. You need to be there. I showed up at 10:55, walked into the conference room like I owned the place. Because I did. The board members were already seated. My father was at the head of the table, his face purple with rage. My mother sat next to him, looking like someone had died. Melissa was notably absent. She wasn't a board member, wasn't a senior executive, wasn't anything except someone who'd almost been handed a company she hadn't earned. You, my father said when I walked in, you did this. The board did this, I corrected. I just accepted their decision. You went behind my back. You conspired with my board members. I presented them with data, financial projections, strategic analyses. They made an informed decision about the company's future. I'm the chairman, and they're the board, which, according to our bylaws, don't quote bylaws to me. I've been running this company for 30 years. And in those 30 years, have you ever had 9 unanimous votes against you? I asked. Every single board member agreed I was the better choice. What does that tell you? It tells me my own board betrayed me. It tells you that everyone in this room except you and Mom knows that Melissa can't run a lemonade stand, let alone a multinational corporation. My mother gasped. How dare you? How dare I? How dare you? I stood up, leaning across the table. I have worked myself to the bone for this company. I've generated billions in revenue. I've saved jobs. I've built relationships. I've done everything you ever asked and more. And you tried to hand it to her because what? Because she smiles more? Because she doesn't challenge you? Because she makes you feel like you're still the smartest person in the room? Victoria, Richard started. No, I didn't take my eyes off my father. He needs to hear this. You told me I was too emotional. You know what's emotional? Choosing your favorite child over the survival of the company. Risking everything our grandfather built because you can't handle that your screw-up daughter is actually the one who deserves to lead. That's emotional. That's personal. That's everything you accused me of being. My father's hands were shaking. You've destroyed this family. I've saved this company. There's a difference. I'll never forgive you. I'll live with that. The board meeting continued. Official transition plans were discussed. My father remained chairman but with limited authority. He fought every single point, but he was outvoted on every single issue. 9-1, over and over again. By the time the meeting ended at 1 o'clock, my father looked like he'd aged 10 years. He and my mother left without speaking to me. I went to my new office, the CEO's office, the one that used to be my father's. I sat in his chair and looked out at the Chicago skyline. My assistant knocked. Ms. Chen, you have about 40 interview requests from business press, and every major investor wants a call, and the employees are asking about a company-wide meeting. Schedule the investor calls for this afternoon. We'll do a company meeting tomorrow. Tell the press I'll give one exclusive interview to the Journal for Friday's edition. Yes, Ms. Chen. She left. I sat alone in the office that was now mine. My phone buzzed. A text from Melissa. I hope you're happy. You've destroyed everything. I deleted it without responding. Another text from my mother. Your father is devastated. I hope you can live with yourself. I turned my phone off. That was 6 weeks ago. The transition has been brutal. My father has fought me on every decision, questioned every strategy, tried to undermine my authority at every turn. Half the senior executives are thrilled with the change. The other half are terrified of angering the chairman. But the numbers don't lie. Revenue's up. Employee satisfaction is climbing. 3 major clients who were considering leaving have renewed their contracts. The stock price has increased 14%. The business press loves the story. Young CEO stages corporate coup was Business Insider's headline. How Victoria Chen outmaneuvered her own father ran in Forbes. I've done dozens of interviews, and I'm very careful with my words. I never badmouth my father. I never explain what really happened in that office when he tried to make me sign over my shares. I let the results speak for themselves. My family hasn't spoken to me since that board meeting. I won't pretend it doesn't hurt. I won't pretend there aren't nights when I lie awake wondering if I did the right thing, if I could have found another way, if I destroyed something that could have been repaired. But then I come to the office. I see the employees who no longer have to worry about incompetent leadership. I see the investors who finally have confidence in the company's direction. I see the growth projections and the expansion plans and the future that nearly got sacrificed on the altar of my father's ego. And I know I made the right choice. Last week, I had dinner with Richard. How are you holding up? He asked. I'm exhausted. I'm angry. I'm sad. But I'm exactly where I should be. Your grandfather would be proud. Would he? He built this company for the family, Victoria. But he built it for the family that would preserve it, not destroy it. You did what he would have done. I destroyed my relationship with my parents. No, they did that themselves when they chose favorites over fairness. You just forced everyone to see what was already true. I don't know if that makes it better, but it makes it bearable. The shares I signed over to Melissa that Sunday? Richard helped me challenge the transfer on the grounds that it was signed under duress, before I knew about the board's decision. The documents are invalid. Melissa never actually got my shares. She got nothing. She's still technically employed by the company, though she rarely shows up. Human Resources is building a case for termination. It won't be pretty. My father still comes to board meetings, still votes against me on every issue, still loses every vote. He's talking about selling his shares. Let him. I have the board, the employees, and the results. I have the company my grandfather built, and I'm going to make damn sure it survives for the next generation, even if that generation isn't mine. The documentary crew that's been following my first 90 days as CEO asked me yesterday if I had any regrets. I thought about that pen in my hand, signing away my shares while my family watched. I thought about walking out of that office knowing what was coming. I thought about the look on my father's face when he saw the headline. No, I said. I don't regret anything. They taught me to be strategic, to think long-term, to never show your hand until you're ready to play it. I just learned the lessons better than they expected. The interviewer asked what advice I'd give to other people facing similar family business dynamics. I looked directly at the camera. Document everything. Build your case. Know your worth. And when they try to take from you what you've earned, don't argue, don't fight. Just make sure you've already won before they realize the game is over. If you enjoyed this story of justice and reclaiming what's yours, subscribe to hear more stories like this. My father called yesterday. First time in 6 weeks. We need to talk, he said. About what? About fixing this. About finding a way forward. I've already found my way forward, Dad. You're welcome to join me when you're ready to accept reality. I hung up. I'm 29 years old. I run a billion-dollar company. I lost my family in the process. But I saved the company they tried to destroy. That has to be enough. Because it's all I have left.